G'day and welcome to Breaking Even with Al Payton without Al Payton. Instead, it is me, Patch. I'm here with Chloe on the official Supercoach podcast. Welcome, Chloe. How are you?
Happy to be here. Feels a bit weird to be in here without Al, especially when it's Breaking Even with Al Payton, but we continue nonetheless.
Not this week. And you've asked us to do a nuffy takeover this week. For those watching on the Code Sports YouTube page, we're dressed up in Essendon and Carlton gear.
Well, it's a bit cold here in the office, so I thought, why not chuck our scarves on for this episode? Got the bobbleheads behind us, so I'm not quite sure what trade advice they can give us, but we'll be here for that, so that's fine.
Maybe it's better than our trade advice. We'll find out.
It's probably better than mine.
Anyway, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment on wherever you're listening to the podcast. Give us a review and make sure you're also, if you can, watch on Code Sports YouTube so you can see our wonderful faces. Before we get too stuck into it, make sure you're subscribing to Supercoach Plus for break-evens, projections, price projections, all of that good stuff. And now we'll tuck into the HBF Injury Report. Every Supercoach knows that managing injuries is the key to success. This is the Injury Report, proudly brought to you by HBF, your health dream team. Chloe, big news this week, lots of injury news.
Plenty of injury news, but there is also plenty of positive injury news this week for our injury report. So Tristan Xerri, concussion concerns over the weekend, but he remains all clear at this stage, being monitored at training, but hopefully will suit up on the weekend. And the same goes for Lachie Whitfield, who missed last week, but looks on track to play this week. Jye Caldwell, not quite as lucky, unfortunately, for your Bombers, Patch.
Oh dear.
A syndesmosis injury with no time frame on his return.
It's good news for Zach Reid though, right?
No.
Oh.
The bad luck keeps on coming for those Bombers. So Zach Reid is also unfortunately out for the season after being a Supercoach saviour early on.
Fold the club, honestly. Anyway, in other news, Bailey Smith is apparently all clear after being a late out last weekend for the Cats. Josh Rochelle will miss significant time with a knee injury, which might affect Isaac Rankin. If you're an owner of him, does he spend more time forward? Sam Powell-Pepper and Sam Lawler, who were popular rookies through the year, are also set to miss long-term, which is sad for them. But good news on the rookie front, Campbell Gray, if you've still got him, listed as a test, which could be fantastic for people in need of some cover. That's a wrap on this week's HBF Injury Report. Thanks to HBF. Make the smart move. Join HBF, your health dream team. Now, we've got 3 big questions that have come through. We asked for your questions on social media, and we got 3 big kind of general chunks worth of questions. So we're going to tuck into the first one, as you mentioned in the HBF Injury Report. Jye Caldwell is going to miss.
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate for owners because ever since bringing him in, he was able to make a whole lot of cash and produce some pretty good scores. So the benefit is you do have that cash to spend, but the thing is, here come the precious trades. So you'd better be hoping that you've got some precious trades up your sleeve.
So how many trades can you use on Caldwell, do you think? Can you use, if you've got a Henry Housewaite, can you downgrade him still, or can you downgrade someone to then get some cash to upgrade him, or does it need to be a one and done situation?
I think it all depends on how many trades you do have currently. For me, I think in an ideal world, I will just preface this with the fact that I only have 2 trades left, but in an ideal world, I would probably prefer to have 3 at this point in time, minimum.
Yeah.
There is always, obviously, that maybe you won't need to use them and there's no point just hoarding the trades for no reason, but especially with this week of injuries and, even for me having Whitfield and Bailey Smith both miss last week, I did have bench cover that I was able to swing across, but it is always good to have an extra trade or 2 lying around if you can. But if you don't have money in the bank and you need to do a downgrade to get Caldwell to a good primo that you're missing out on, then I would probably recommend that if I was in that boat. I was in a similar boat a few weeks ago, and Jack Macrae is still a really good option for this scenario, but I was able to do an extra trade and get Nick Dacos in instead of Jack Macrae, which for now I'm really glad that I did that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think if you can do it in one, then I think you should. We've had one question from AJ who's saying he has 100K in the bank, 4 trades left. That situation is pretty easy to just use the one trade.
Definitely. If you've got 100K.
Yeah, I'm in a boat where I've got 20 or 30K sitting there, which is enough to kind of play around with. I think there are, and we'll talk about them in a second, some cheaper options that might help you out if you've got lower numbers of trades.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think generally, we've spoken about this, that just buy the best option you can.
Yeah, and there's plenty of good options around that you could get to with some cash movement. So you've got the likes of Dacos, Anderson, Bont, Goulden, and if you don't have the cash, then Zach Merritt's only about 1K more.
Yeah, $1,100
right.
more
That
expensive.
$100 could be important.
Which it could be, but also, if you're taking a pick between Jye Caldwell and Zach Merritt, you're probably picking Merritt every time.
Yeah, well, especially after the weekend.
Yes, because he's back in the midfield. This weekend he has Richmond, who he scored a bazillion points against last time. And despite a few tagging teams on the run home, I still think he's the no-brainer swap. You bomber for bomber.
Well, it makes sense from a role perspective as well. With, someone will need to be, his CBAs were already increased last week, but someone will need to absorb those minutes. So I guess they just probably don't have the choice of rolling him back into the backline anymore. Yeah,
I think he's also the biggest vice-captain or captain option of the round, despite what the Phantom might have said on the lair about Nick Martin breaking the possession record this week. I think Merritt's the one who probably goes a little bit bigger right at the coalface. And around that price as well, if you've already got Merritt or you don't want Merritt and you've sworn off all Essendon players forever, Tom Liberatore is a little bit more expensive if you've got 20 or 30K coming off a 171. So
huge.
Yeah, and Ed Richards, if you can hold him a week, if you've got like a Zach Johnson and can cover him, shout out to Damo from the mailbag for this suggestion. Ed Richards is about to drop to 530K next week. So if you want to hold off, that could be an option for Richards, who's still a pod despite
he is still a pod. He's been a pod all year.
He's been fantastic, and if you can jump on him, that might be the play. But if he's in flex, there's plenty of options as well.
Yeah, definitely. And some in the cheaper bracket as well.
Yes, like I think McRae is the best forward mid option, as you've mentioned. But the guy I'm probably trading in this week, Jeremy Cameron, is 447K.
Yeah, around that mark.
The best time to get him was last week before his 131 against the Tigers. But good news, plays the Tigers again on the run home. Plays North, plays Essendon, plays GWS backline without Sam Taylor in it this week.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think there's a lot of juice in that lemon if you can put up with the 20s and 30s and 40s that he has dropped in this year and will continue to drop again.
Do you think it helps with his Coleman race? Like, do you think that that's going to be something that leading the Coleman, do you think that he'll be less likely now to drop those lower scores if he's kind of in pursuit of that? Do you think that's something he would be thinking about at all, or do you think it's just not even on his mind?
I think he's chasing the flag more than a Coleman, and if he knows that if he needs a rest or needs to be subbed out at 3/4 time of a game, I think he'll do that instead of chasing the Coleman. But who knows? I certainly couldn't go inside the mind of the Geelong coaching staff and their weird laid-outs and injuries and management.
Well, they did do that with Bailey Smith this week. I mean, he was sick, but at the same time, maybe they weren't willing to take any chances at all. So hopefully we don't see that with Jeremy Cameron. But I guess that is the risk that comes with the Geelong players. Like danger over there now.
If you want someone is he more consistent? But Jason Horne-Francis is cheaper than Jeremy Cameron has been worse than Jeremy Cameron
Yes, it's probably why he's cheaper.
So that might have something to do with it. If you're picking one of those two, who are you picking?
Well, I do already have Horne-Francis, and I never traded him out when he got injured, so I did have faith in him, and I'm sure he will repay that eventually. But I kind of like the idea of the roller coaster of Jeremy Cameron, especially at this time of year. There's, at least for me personally, I feel like I don't have too many pods, and it's kind of you feel a bit sorry for yourself because every time you come up against someone in a matchup, you're kind of looking for, how am I going to get some points over them? And then you don't have a way to get ahead. So I think Jeremy Cameron could be a great way to get ahead. But at the same time, obviously Horne-Francis just feels a bit safer, even though he hasn't been as good this year. But I don't know. I'm not going to tell everyone to go rogue, but Jeremy Cameron I feel like would be a fun one, especially with that great run home.
Fun one or terrible one.
Well, yeah, it could go either way.
It could be a Charlie Curnow from 2 seasons ago.
But Horne-Francis could also go.
Well, that is true.
And Curnow was carrying an injury, so I'm hoping that Jeremy Cameron's not carrying an injury.
Just get that nuff alarm should be going off. You got the scarf on and everything. We'll move on to the second talking point, which is luxury trades, and kind of feeds into what we've just been talking about, because my question as part of this is around whether or not Shai Bolton should move to Jeremy Cameron, and that's a trade I should make. Yep. Now, we'll note that the Phantoms Lair had a big segment this week on who should go, who doesn't need to go. So make sure you go and watch that on the Code Sports YouTube page as well. But Chloe, I want your take on both Bolton and Tom de Koning.
Yes.
Who you have.
I do have Tom de Koning, but I also don't have any trades.
So you're holding Tom de Koning. What should somebody with
default,
trades do?
I think it does make it a lot easier if he's your flex, if he's not your R2.
Yeah.
Because he's also my R2 as well as having no trades. So I think that changes things a little bit as well.
You can't get to Grundy in one trade?
No. Bit expensive. It'd be good if you did it a few weeks ago. I don't know who would recommend not doing that. That would be really silly. You definitely should have done that a few weeks ago. I don't know who would have been telling you not to do that.
No one recommended that.
No one. I'm pretty sure I didn't hear anyone once say that it was a bad idea.
No.
Look, Tom de Koning, I'm not necessarily thinking that role situation will improve in the back end of the season. Hudson O'Keefe, the young Blues ruck, is also a test this week. So obviously Pitney was playing, but there's kind of a whole host of options opening up. And then obviously Harry Mackay will eventually hopefully come back in the side towards the back end of the year. I think he's potentially, I didn't check the injury report, but initially it was supposed to be either next week or maybe 2 weeks after that, like 1 to 3 weeks from this week initially was the prognosis. I'm not quite sure of the latest update, but Carlton have options if they're wanting to move around with that role a little bit.
Yeah.
I think even before Pitney coming back into the side, he wasn't performing at his best. I feel like we had discussed that in the past and it became pretty obvious to everyone, probably due to the contract situation. So I'm not at all expecting him to go back to the form that he was at the start of the year.
Does he at least go back to the role that he had at the start of the year, or are they preparing for life after Tom de Koning now?
Well, I think it's almost a mix of both. Won't get too analytical here. It's a Supercoach podcast.
On the Carlton podcast.
Yes, but just the fact that he wasn't necessarily performing in the role before that. Like, I think that's why they brought Pitney back in. I think they gave him a chance to really own the role. He didn't quite do that in more recent times, maybe the first 4 weeks of the year, but from then onwards didn't quite do that. So in terms of wanting to win games, they've kind of had to look elsewhere to find more people to impact the game. So, even hoping that he would have some impact forward of the ball, get some goals on the board to still be able to score Supercoach points. That didn't quite eventuate. It didn't really look like eventuating. I think if it's similar to what we were discussing before, if you're able to if you've got some cash in the bank, if you're able to do a small rookie downgrade, if you don't have any other major issues, and you could try and do it in one trade, or then if you could do it in one trade, it would be ideal to grab someone else. But what are your thoughts on de Koning?
I think it depends on your trade situation. If it takes you below 3.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it I would love to have 3 right now. That would be ideal.
I don't think, especially if he's in your R2, it's such a difficult.
Yeah, if he's in R2, I wouldn't go there.
If he's in your flex, you've got more flexibility. Thanks, flex. And
flex would be the position where I would be looking to move him on if possible.
And then you can play around a little bit more. Back to my problem personally, Shai Bolton, do I trade him or not?
I think that, how many trades do you have personally?
So I have 4 before I do anything this week, and I have Jye Caldwell, so he has to go.
Okay. Would you be able, so you would trade Caldwell and Bolton?
Yes.
Who would you be able to get for that?
Jeremy Cameron and someone else in the midfield. Although I've got Lachie Whitfield in at the moment.
Okay.
So,
look, I think if you can move on from Bolton, I probably would. The only thing is I think he's about, 408k? He's around the low 400s.
Not a lot.
So it's very hard to do in one trade.
Which is why I think a Jeremy Cameron or a Jason Horne-Francis is such a good move for Bolton. But you reckon he should go?
I think that for someone like Jeremy Cameron, who, as I said before, has that sort of pod upside and can kick a bag of goals that will lead to a big score. And even when we were talking before about potentially him being rested, he played in that final game last year against West Coast.
Yes.
And scored plenty of goals in that game. I remember that pretty vividly, so I'm not quite sure what he scored in that game, but I remember it was quite big. So maybe that resting him isn't something they would do if they were willing to let him play that game. But with Bolton, more specifically, Haydn Young's nearly back as well. Yep. So, and his Bolton CBAs were still quite high. I think 75% around there last week. So
he was in a lot of them, but just didn't do
impact,
anything in the first half. So
I think it makes it difficult.
Yeah, the fact that he scored a 50-point second half does make me more intrigued. And like, he can still do it. Got the scoring pedigree, but I'm still very much undecided. Scudder's also asked at the other end of the spectrum, is it worth using his fourth last trade to bring in the Flying Viking? We spoke a little bit about Taru last week.
Yeah.
I was unsure if he'd back it up. He backed it up. Does that change the equation for you? Is it worth spending a trade on a guy that's going to sit on your bench? And in Scud's case, flick around with Ben Payton, but
Al's cousin.
But
Kidding.
What do you reckon?
Look, it's one of those things, and it also lends to the fact, should we be looking at trading rookie cover in at all, which we discussed last week. But I was earlier just saying how I enjoyed bringing Nick Dacos instead of Jack Macrae, even though it cost me an extra trade. But I did have to go early on Sam Butler to be able to do that, and that hasn't necessarily worked out. And I remember Al sitting here saying, well, don't worry about doing that. If you can just trade out the injured player when the time comes, or trade in a better rookie when the time comes. The thing is about Flying Viking is absolutely killing it. But he has already had a price rise.
Yeah.
So it does make it a bit more difficult to bring him in. I think if you had to, he looks great. I think that it would only be injury that would move him out of the side. So in terms of job security, perfect. In terms of scoring power, looks to be pretty good. But it's just whether you're willing to use that trade and say, who else do you already have on your bench? Like, do you have someone like a Campbell Gray who could come good? Do you have Cooper Simpson who could potentially come good around round 20? Like, probably not, but Campbell Gray could come good as soon as this week, so that could help you in your thinking. But, yeah, you would have 3 trades still if it was your fourth last trade. So that helps, because I do like the number 3 for the amount of trades to have left.
Yeah. But
he's a good option, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's then your luxury trade. That's your
that
you're
is your
happy with
luxury
everyone
trade.
else,
Yeah.
No one else is moving. You keep a hold of him. So yeah, I think I'm with you that I'd probably rather the points on field, but maybe if it suits your side.
Yeah, it depends how your on-field team is looking as well. Like, do you have 23 primos? Do you have 23 and then someone like a McCarthy on the bench?
Yeah, is McCarthy one of the 23?
Yeah.
I think in that case, and the cupboard is bare on the bench, then sure.
Yeah, but then I would probably do that, yeah.
But otherwise, I'd probably hold off.
Yep.
The third talking point, next year. Some people are looking to next year because that just happens once you run out of trades.
I'm looking to next year, if I'm being honest.
I wasn't going to name any names, but some people
got beaten in a classic matchup this week and a draft matchup by the same person. So that's got to make you feel a bit sorry for yourself, doesn't it?
Makes me feel great, actually. I feel fantastic about that. So who's first picked next year?
I think for anyone that knows me, listens to the pod, is looking at my scarf right now, if you're watching on Code Sports, it would have to be Jagger Smith.
Yeah, that's a very good.
I'm very excited to have him in my side as a rookie. Look, we don't know for certain that he will play round 1, just with the ACL timeline, considering it was so close to the injury in the preseason. It was so close to the start of the season. Can't say with certainty that he'll definitely line up in round 1, but I'm sure it will be close enough to round 1.
Yeah.
And that
he's first picked when the team picker opens for you, though.
Definitely, yeah. What about you?
At this stage, I think Archie Roberts.
Yeah,
I like the cut
we're
of his
definitely
jib.
not nuffies, hey?
No, not at all. Don't even worry about the scars we're wearing. Yeah, I think Archie Roberts is pretty high up on the list. I'm intrigued by Sam Draper after toying with him this year, but
yes, well, it depends
plenty of water to go under the bridge there. Clayton has asked on Twitter as well if I can ask Chloe whether or not Lachie Cowan can become Sam Doherty 2.0. Very niche question, very broad appeal. But
yeah, it sounds like that this question was designed for the Nuff Alarm edition of the podcast. So I'm not complaining about that. But look, I think it's probably a bit too early to call on that one. I sure hope that he can be, and it would be great for Supercoach if he could be. He hasn't necessarily had those huge scores yet, although an 89 on his return game was pretty impressive. It definitely looked to be playing as more of an attacking player, which is before his injury, he was playing kind of a bit more that lockdown sort of role, but
which
he is
not
more
what he
of
was
a
like drafted as, or not what
no. He was
at.
drafted to attack, great kick, rebounding player, which obviously in Doherty's prime that was one of his best assets. So hopefully he could eventually become a player like that. In terms of next year, Nick Newman's just signed a new contract for 2026, so he would potentially be in that role a little bit more often. But Lachie Cowan also re-signed until 2028, so definitely a part of the future plans. It's just whether or not that sort of breakout Supercoach year comes next year or the year after. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, there's similarities there. Whether it comes next year, I'm can't tell you that. But hopefully he did look pretty good against the Pies, playing more of that attacking role. So if we see a bit more of that towards the back end of this year, then maybe it is something we could consider for next year. But yeah, once again, plenty of water to go under the bridge there.
Lovely. And then finally, the final question is from Peter, asking if he can have 10 more trades. And you know what? I'm sitting in El's chair. I'm doing El's job while he's away. Sure. You know what? Peter can have 10 more trades.
Too?
You can have Can
I just have one so I can have 3?
Yeah, you can have one.
I
reckon everyone can have 5 trades. You know what? Executive decision. If you're watching on Code Sports, you can have 5 trades. Treat yourself. Buy yourself something nice. We'll move along before anyone cuts me off and shuts down the show. We'll move along to captains, where we have a look at our best options for captaincy.
Top
this
5
week.
plus a special mention.
Top 5 plus the vibes pick, which is what I'm calling it, where there's no data, but I just got a feeling. Chloe, who are you looking at as the best captaincy options this week and why?
Okay, so the first one, which will probably burn me because he's burnt me a few times this year, Marcus Bontempelli.
Mr. 60s himself.
Yes, exactly. But I use our stats dossier every week on Code Sports to help me decide my captains, as well as just copying whatever he does. But that's where he gets his information from, so I would definitely recommend checking that one out. So amongst there, Adelaide are ranked 14th in points conceded to mids. So kind of at the lower end. And I think that, Bont doesn't have the best track record against the Crows, but as you were saying, vibe. So I wouldn't say that he's my number one option, but I would definitely be putting him on your list of players to consider. Noah Anderson, though, is top of my list. I don't own him.
He's your number one vice-captaincy option this week, you reckon?
Yeah, but I don't own him. I know you do, though.
I do. Well, this is general advice for
General
anyone.
advice, yeah. 140 in his last outing versus the Pies, and he is in some hot form at the moment, although he did have a slower start last week, but he was still able to score a ton in that game. So the fact that he was still able to score a ton has such a good last score versus Collingwood, and also Collingwood are just below Adelaide, so ranked 15th for points conceded to mids as well.
Yep. Playing up there as well, which he loves playing.
Loves a home game.
He does love a home game.
And then I'll just run through the next ones quickly. Bailey Smith, Zach Merritt and Brodie Grundy. So Bailey Smith as well, so 154 against GWS this year.
That's a lot. That's a lot
of
points.
It is a lot of points. You'd be hoping maybe he would want to have a bit of a bounce back game as well after missing last week. And then Zach Merritt, of course, 33% CBA increase last week. So hoping that role continues, as we mentioned before, 156 points in the Dreamtime game against the Tigers, and the Tigers 16th in points conceded to mid. So I think he's a must consider.
Yep.
And then Brodie Grundy in such hot form at the moment. St Kilda are ranked 12th in points to rucks. Last week, Freo were 9th and he was still able to top score. So, don't go against a man in such good form.
Yep. He's undeniable at this stage. Do you have a special mention or a vibes?
Well, you stole my vibes pick, actually. So I'll leave that for you to reveal, but I'll put my vibes pick down as Luke Jackson for this week.
Yep. Very good. I've got Zach Merritt as my number one option this week. You've spoken about why. Don't need to elaborate, but he could score a gazillion points.
He could.
This week against the Tigers. Brodie Grundy hasn't dropped. He dropped below 155 for the first time in a month last week.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
4 scores higher than 155 in a row, which is bonkers. Noah Anderson averages 116 against the Pies, 103 at Carrara. But conversely, I have to make the choice. Some coaches will make the choice between Noah Anderson and Nick Brownlow-Dacos.
Yes, definitely.
On Friday night in the same game. The Suns don't tag either.
It's dangerous.
So unless they give Touk Miller a run with role, which I don't know, maybe not. It's just a very difficult choice to make. They're both projected to score very, very well. Noah Anderson projected to go 133, Dacos 144 by Supercoach Plus. So there's a lot of points on offer there between the two of them. And at this stage, leaning towards Anderson, but mainly because Manny had hope that as a point of difference, he can go larger, but the gut says Dacos probably goes a bit bigger.
Yeah.
And then you could put a bunch of names here, but Zach Butters, against the Eagles. Could be Connor Rozee against the Eagles. Could be Jason Horne-Francis against the Eagles. I wouldn't do it, but he could be in for a big game, I think, especially last game of the round, very easy to then pull that loop as well. So
I like those options.
But I think Zach Butters could go big. And the Vibes pick, I don't know why. There's no numbers to back this up. He's not been in particularly good form. But something just tells me, I just got a little feeling, a bit of an inkling, that Harry Sheezel might go big this week.
I had that feeling as well, actually.
They play the D's on the Sunday. I don't think I'd be bold enough to captain him. I don't know if they'd, your mileage may vary on a Sunday in terms of vice captaining him, but I just have a feeling that he'll have a point to prove. He wants to get into some form. The D's are not particularly good at the minute.
And they do concede a lot of points both to forwards and to mids.
So I don't know. Maybe keep an eye out. We'll see.
Yeah, don't mind it.
Anyway, I think that's about it. Unless you've got any more Nuff Carlton stuff you want to bring up and talk about.
Even I can admit there's probably been enough Carlton talk this week. So
there has been a lot of Carlton
I'll probably
chat.
spare everyone.
Yeah.
I think I'll spare everyone.
Very fair. And now for my 30-minute essay about Essendon. No, we're cutting that out. We're calling it here. Thank you very much for listening along or watching if you're watching on YouTube. We've got the live show as always. Al might be away, but the fun never stops. So the live show is continuing, 6:30 p.m. on Thursday. Matt Forrest will be there as always. There might be a special guest joining him, a very big name, but we'll have to wait.
You'll have to tune in.
You'll have to tune in and find out.
Yep.
Thank you very much for watching. Good luck with your trades if you've got them. We will see you again soon.